a Saturday night. We're gonna dance till the broad daylight. Then I'll take my sweetie back home. Why don't you get away, lazy John? Lazy John, lazy John, why don't you get your day's work all done? I'm in the shade and you're in the sun. Why don't you get away, lazy John? Break of day, down to the field, try to earn my pay. Then on later you came along. Why don't you get away, lazy John? Lazy John, lazy John, why don't you get your day's work all done? I'm in the shade, you're in the sun. Why don't you get away, lazy John? Why don't you get your day's work all done? I'm in the shade and you're in the sun. Why don't you get away, lazy John?
Tune in to Radio Bristol every Thursday at 4 p.m. for Pressing Matters. My name is Clint Holly, and I will be your host as we take a stroll through my record collection and listen to some lost classics, new releases, and reissues all spun directly from the vinyl format. If you like radio where the DJ still picks out the music and tells you something about the artist, then this show's for you as I bring in stacks and stacks of vinyl records from the past and the present to spin for you, the listener. So tune in Thursdays, 4 p.m. on Radio Bristol. See you there.
Hey there, folks. Coming to you from Bristol on the Tennessee-Virginia state line. This is Willie Watson, and you're listening to WBCM.
Broadcasting from the birthplace of country music, this is WBCM LP Bristol.
Summer sky, I would go falling through the hot summer sky, with ribbons and bows tied to my hands and my feet, ribbons and bows tied to my hands and my feet. I'd gaze across the world and I would feel complete. I'd gaze across the world and I would feel complete. sky. Rhythms and bows tied to my hands
So
and
they'll
my
have them
feet.
turned down up there, but they should be on.
Rhythms and bows tied to
Yeah, they're already
my
on. They
hands
just
and
turn
my
down up there until they
I get across the world and I would feel complete. I get across the world.
So, hello, everyone. This is amazing. What a wonderful turnout we have tonight. Thank you all so much for being here with us as part of the week of MLK Junior celebrations here in Bristol, Tennessee, Virginia. We're in Virginia right now, just to be clear. But thank you so much for coming out. My name is Renee Rogers, and I am the museum director here at the Birthplace of Country Music Museum. And my two colleagues, Josh and Tobias, are upstairs, up at the top of the stairs doing all of the tech side. So let's thank them for that hard work. So we are very excited tonight to host two of my friends, Tina McDaniel and William Isom II. They will be talking to us about Bristol's African American history and several local projects to illuminate those stories. Before we get started, I have a few housekeeping details, and I want to tell you a little bit about them. If you do need to use the restroom at any point, please do not worry. You can leave. We're all adults here. The restrooms are just down the hall and to the left. If you need to leave early for some reason, the front doors will be locked in the next 10 minutes, and so you'll just need to go out the doors that are right outside the Performance Theater here instead. There will be a Q&A afterwards, so time for you all to ask your own questions of Tina and William. And if you are joining us on YouTube, you can put a question into the comments, and Tobias and Josh will be keeping an eye out for those so that we can bring those into the discussion too. We send out a survey after these events. Please keep an eye out for that. It'll only takes a minute or two, but it really does help us with planning for future events, and we do appreciate your feedback. And then finally, please consider sharing a donation after tonight's program. For those of you who are in person with us, we have a donation jar down there. And for those of you who are on YouTube, you can go to our website and donate there. The museum offers mostly free and low-cost programming to our community throughout the year. This is one of our free programs. So anything you give helps us to continue to create programs like this one and make sure that it's accessible to as many people as possible, and we really do appreciate that support. With all that being said, I'm now very excited to tell you a little bit about our two speakers tonight. Tina McDaniel is a retired corporate professional, and she spent the last few years working in the nonprofit space. She's particularly proud of her work and the partnership that she's forged with Black in Appalachia to bring visibility to the neglected history of Bristol's African American community. Most recently, Tina led the Bristol Community Remembrance Project Coalition, a partnership with the Equal Justice Initiative in Montgomery, Alabama. This was to bring education and awareness and to memorialize the lynching of Mr. Robert Clark in Bristol, Virginia. Tina is active in the community and serves on several boards. And in 2025, she was awarded a grant from Virginia Humanities and the Worrell Foundation for the Souls of Bristol's Black Bottom, a project that will highlight Bristol's Black business district, which existed from the late 1890s to the mid-1960s, when it was later removed as part of urban renewal efforts. And we are right on the edge of that African American business district. Tina resides in Bristol, Tennessee with her husband and son, and she does so many good things, and I'm really proud to have her here with us. William Isom is an East Tennessee native and the director of Black in Appalachia. He coordinates the project's research, community database development, documentary film and photography production, oral history collection, and educational events with residents. He was actually one of our very first speaker sessions when we started this program as a virtual program during the pandemic. I think you were the second speaker that we had, William. So we're glad to have him back with us today, and I think you're going to really enjoy the conversation we're about to have and learn an awful lot about a hidden history that's very, very important to our town. So join me in welcoming both William and Tina, and we'll get started. So we're doing this a little bit conversational style, so I'm going to just jump in to give a little bit of context from both of you. And I'm going to start with you, Tina, and ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started in the work of illuminating these histories and stories in Bristol.
Sure. I am a native Northeast Tennessean. I was born in Washington County, Tennessee. However, I've spent most of my adult life in Bristol, so you might as well just say I'm a Bristolian. I've been here for over 40 years. How I got involved in this work, you know, that was a good question because it caused me to go back and think about, you know, what was happening during that time frame. So around 2017, I retired from my career at Sprint. I started working for a nonprofit. And then the movie Hidden Figures came out. Does anybody remember the movie Hidden Figures? I think that really did something to me because the story of Katherine Johnson, who was the teacher who taught at the Carnegie School in Marion, Virginia, and we knew nothing about her story. So that happened, and then I worked with Renee on a project for all the world to see here at the museum, and she asked me to connect her with some folks with Douglas and with Slater School because she wanted to feature them in an exhibit. So I did that, was a part of that exhibit, and then it made me realize I really don't know an awful lot about the history of the Black community here in Bristol. So then 2018, we had our very first MLK celebration, the citywide celebration, and that focus was on legacy. So we did videos of Dr. W.A. Johnson, Ms. Wilhelmina Banks, Miss Jewel Bell. So we featured them, and they told us a little bit about their story. And then I just felt this sense of urgency to find out about the history because, you know, our elders were, they were getting at an age where they weren't going to be with us very long. I was dealing with my own parents, and they were getting older, and I realized, you know, that I didn't have their stories and hadn't captured that. So I think all of those different things kind of happened at one time. And then I went to an organization, and it's like, you know, I really want to learn about the history of Bristol's Black community. And then I was told that, you know, we really don't have a lot. And then I'm thinking, okay, there's a citizen cemetery, so there's a lot of Black folks that are buried there in that cemetery. And then I know there's another cemetery, you know, on Weaver Pike. So I think that sense of urgency, and then realizing that there was a gap and there was no documented history available. So I think that's really what got me started.
I'm glad you mentioned... I'm really glad that you mentioned For All the World to See, because that was a wonderful exhibit that we had here in 2018 about visual culture and the civil rights movement. And it was really, really important to us to include some local stories, and without Tina, we wouldn't have been able to do that. So I'm glad you mentioned that. William, how about you? How did Black in Appalachia become involved in Bristol Stories? And also tell us a little bit about what Black in Appalachia is and does.
Yeah, so Black in Appalachia, we started this project. It was a project with East Tennessee PBS 13 years ago, 2012, and it was just a project to produce short, locally specific documentaries about Black history in East Tennessee, and producing PBS quality documentaries. And so we did that, but in doing that work, it became really apparent that the need for documentation and the sheer scope of stories were so large that just producing documentaries wasn't going to cut it, right? Like, so we wanted to figure out how we could basically, to keep it simple, just provide labor to the documentation and making available of Black narratives. That's one of the things that we've not had, is just purely applying work and labor to the development and research of these stories. And so that's what Black in Appalachia was kind of born out of. Bristol, on the other hand, I guess it was 2018, 2019, I got a call or an email from Tina wanting our help to help support the work that she's doing here. And one of the things that Black in Appalachia does, we work all across the region, technically from Pittsburgh down to Birmingham, but in reality, we work in Central Appalachia. And we don't go into communities and start working without an invitation. And so once the community members invite us in, then we can see how we can support the work. And that's what happened with Tina. Tina hollered at me, and she wanted to do what we call a community history day. And we set up at the Slater School, conducted oral histories. Renee, you were there scanning people's photographs in. Many of y'all were there bringing your photographs and doing oral histories. And the Bristol Public Library folks come out and help scan stuff. And so we spent a full day there, 8 full hours, conducting oral histories and scanning people's materials in. And that was kind of the start of the work, Black in Appalachia's role in supporting Tina's efforts here in Bristol.
And if I remember correctly, William, you also, and I think probably part of the PBS level documentaries, you did a Leslie Riddle, some filming here. I think that's when we first met.
Yeah, and you're in the documentary.
Yes, I am.
So if you Google Leslie Riddle, you can see Renee.
Yes. Probably looking very silly because I get so embarrassed doing those things. So I mentioned earlier that the museum is right on the edge of Black Bottom, on that Black business district. So I wanted us to start there, and there are stories of the Black community using this building back in the 1920s, 1930s. Can you tell us about Black Bottom, what used to be here, and the connection to the museum building?
Sure. So Black Bottom existed from the late 1800s, so 1890s. We were able to go back and look at city directories, and there were close to a dozen businesses, Black businesses. So the boundaries for Black Bottom would be Cumberland Street, Martin Luther King, Scott, and Lee. Now, the streets were different names. Am I talking too loud? The streets were different names. So where Cumberland is located, it was like a Sycamore Street. Where Martin Luther King is located, that was Front Street. So that's kind of the boundary for Black Bottom. So we looked at 1896 to 1897, looked at those directories. There were like a dozen businesses. The height of Black Bottom was in the 1930s, 1940s, and the businesses doubled. So that was kind of like the height of Black Bottom. So this is pictures of where we got started. And it really came from Ms. Jewel Bell. And Ms. Jewel Bell was telling me about coming here, and it wasn't the birthplace then. I guess it was maybe the Good Pasture, maybe a car dealership. But on the second floor, it was a venue, so they would have like boxing matches. They would have dance hall type events, or like the Duke Ellington big band kind of thing. And Ms. Jewel was just so excited to share with us about growing up and coming to these dances. So she really kind of piqued my interest in Black Bottom. So in 2019, you'll see we met in the parking lot there at WCYB, and it was really giving Ms. Jewel Bell an opportunity to tell us about Black Bottom. And then from there, that's when the work was done on the city directories. So there were all kinds of businesses, lots and lots of barbershops. Lots and lots of barbershops, beauty shops, things that were necessary for people to have. In 1897, there was like a grocery store. It was called the Bristol Enterprise Trading Company. So the pastor of Lee Street at that time, Reverend Charles Henry Johnson, he was a part of the board for the Bristol Enterprise Trading Company. There was a pool hall. There was restaurant, hotel, room and board. At one time, there was a record shop, Masonic Lodge. Lee Street Baptist Church was located there. So it was a thriving area, but it was a vital area that was needed. So they had to create a parallel institution because of segregation. So this is what it was. It was Black Bottom. I think we've got some pictures here. So what was interesting to me was that during that time frame, there was an infrastructure in place, the Negro Business League. This was something that was started by Booker T. Washington, and it was to undergird black businesses during that time. So there was that infrastructure that was in place. And then there was also some really cool connections to Booker T. Washington. He came to Bristol in the early 1900s, and there was a barber, Mr. R.E. Clay, who worked for Booker T. Washington. So he was Booker T. Washington's assistant. Well, I'll talk a little bit more about his story, but I think it's really fascinating that we had such tight connections with Booker T. Washington. So this is the Bristol Enterprise Trading Company. That was the grocery store. And then you'll see Lee Street Baptist Church. And then here is the pastor at Lee Street, Reverend Charles Henry Johnson. And then this is the Mr. Clay that I was talking to you about, who was the assistant who worked for Booker T. Washington. So fascinating man, and I'll tell you more about him later.
Can you tell us how and why Black Bottom changed over the years, and including more recently with some historic markers that have gone up in the area?
I don't know if I can top Tina. Tina knows it all. Yeah, so Black Bottom began to wane in the 1960s, and really what happened was the thing that destroyed Black Bottom was the urban renewal program, the federal urban renewal program, and this federal urban renewal program was the second one in the whole state of Virginia was conducted here. And so what happened was, and we were able to see kind of the process for the urban renewal, or as I call it, urban removal, with the housing authority records. Tina located the public housing authority records, and we were able to go in and scan those, and you're able to see who owned the businesses, who owned the buildings, what price they were paid for, and the conditions in which those buildings were in. Some of those, by the time urban renewal came through, were vacant, but some of them were still very much being used. And we should also note that the urban renewal process was the thing that created public housing entities. The housing authorities were created by urban renewal projects, and they held incredible political and economic sway in cities that they were established. And so the Bristol Housing Authority was incredibly powerful at that time. That's where Johnson Court came from, right? Mm-hmm. And there we saw in those records, black homeowners that owned their land were displaced for public housing to be created, right? And so Black Bottom was erased from the map, and the houses that would be Johnson Court, were the homeowners were removed from the landscape. And so, but now, and through largely the work of Tina, and I'm going to let her talk about this because this is her work. These two markers, which were at the time the only two historic markers in Bristol that recognized African Americans.
So this was a community project. So a community task force was formed. I think it was 2017. There was an article in the Bristol Herald Courier, and it was about this gentleman, Charles Spurgeon Johnson. And I think it said it was Bristol's famous son. Nobody knew about him. But Charles Spurgeon Johnson, Dr. Charles Spurgeon Johnson, was born in Bristol, Virginia on Moore Street. He was the first black president of Fisk University in Nashville. He was a noted sociologist. He was part of the Harlem Renaissance. His grandson was the secretary of the Department of Homeland Security under President Obama. So this man was born in Bristol, Virginia. And then his father pastored for, I think it was like 40 some years at Lee Street Baptist Church. And he was responsible for building the picture that you saw previously, the brick edifice. He was responsible for building that church. So what we did is we pulled together a community task force. Sid Oakley and I kind of led the project, and Sid's sitting back there in the back. So Sid, so we kind of led the project. It was a partnership with the Historical Association, and what we did is we had markers erected in the Cumberland Park, one for Charles Spurgeon Johnson, and then the other for Lee Street Baptist Church. And as William mentioned, these at the time were the first markers acknowledging someone from the African American community here in Bristol. So hopefully everybody has seen these markers. It's in Cumberland Park, right across from the courthouse. If you haven't, stop by and take a look at those. So that was in, I think, October 2021.
You mentioned earlier about the oral histories that during that Community History Day, and oral histories are also a really big part of any type of history like this. Can you share a few interesting stories or things that you've learned from some of those folks that you've talked to?
The oral histories were wonderful, and I think we've got some people here who provided their story. Whenever I talked to several folks after they gave their oral story, one thing that comes to mind is one person told me, "Thank you for doing this because nobody ever asked me what it was like." I think what I saw was a thread that went throughout all of the oral stories where there was strong community, and the community was referred to as our village. So there were neighborhoods. There was the Woodlawn community, which was located on Martin Luther King, where the YMCA is located, and where that the school board building. So all through there, that was a black neighborhood. That was a village. So a lot of stories talking about the village. One of the funny stories is that whenever you went to school, whether it was Slater or Douglas, and if you got in trouble, and back in that time frame, your parents may have not had a telephone, but somehow they knew by the time you got home that something had happened at school. So there was a strong network that was in place. So community was really kind of one of the strong threads, and just pride in community is one of the things that I heard. Mr. Lawrence Bell had a wonderful story about Black Bottom. So there was a beauty shop. Miss Ann, I think was her name, was the beautician, the barber. And he would talk about how the young men loved to go see Miss Ann, and she was pretty. And they would save their money so that they could provide her with a good tip. So... And then stories of just going to church in Black Bottom and the Peter Pan Bakery, and how folks would stop at Peter Pan Bakery and get a donut or something before going to Sunday school. So just a lot of just really wonderful stories. Now this lady, Miss May Gillenwater, she lives in Cheyenne, Wyoming. She's Willa Mae Clark is probably her name whenever she was here. So is it Mitchell? Mitchell. So in fact, you're the one that told me about her. So we did her oral story, and just so rich. I talked to her a couple of weeks ago, and she said, Miss Tina, this is my 100th year. So she will be 100 years old. And one of the stories that she told me is that whenever she was shopping downtown, I guess with her mother, she saw this plant in a store, and she wanted a piece of that plant. So the lady at the store, gave her a little cutting from the plant. Well, she still has that plant in her house right now. So she showed me a picture of it. So a lot of really fascinating stories.
And something I meant to ask earlier when we were talking about Black Bottom, it's not specific to this area, but there were several tourist homes and other businesses that were in the the Green Book. Is that correct, in Bristol? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So the very first Green Book location in Bristol was the Palace Hotel. It was located on Front Street in Black Bottom. Other Green Book locations and popular Green Book locations was the Morocco Grill. We have somebody here who actually worked in the Morocco Grill. So I won't ask you to raise your hand or anything. So the Palace Hotel, the 1930s all the way up until the 1950s, the Morocco Grill, pretty consistent in the Green Book. And then on McDowell Street, there were two homes. There was the Brown home and then the Henderson home. So we had several Green Book locations. And if you don't know what a Green Book location is, does anybody not know what a Green Book location is? So a Green Book location was a booklet that Victor Hugo Green came up with in the 30s to provide black people as they traveled with safe places where they could lodge, where they could get something to eat. So it was a directory specifically for the safety of African Americans as they travel.
And the McDowell Street tourist home is still there. Am I correct? Or one of them is.
So the Brown home, I understand, is still there, but the Henderson home is no longer there.
And for those of you who don't know where Front Street used to be, it's basically MLK, so the street right in front of the train station. So just around the corner from here. You've both been really active in the Community Remembrance Project, which we mentioned earlier. Tell us about that and why that history is so important in Bristol.
I was listening to Tina like the rest of y'all. The Community Remembrance Project, again, Tina reached out to talk with me about, she had heard that there was a lynching in Bristol, Virginia. She had went to EJI and saw that there was a marker that listed this Robert Clark was lynched in Bristol, Tennessee, or in Sullivan County. And I'd never heard anything about it. And once we started researching it, we discovered it was me and Tina and Preston Mitchell. We started digging in. Preston had worked on the Community Remembrance Project at 3 lynching sites in Wise County, Virginia, previous to that. Preston moved into Washington County, Virginia, and me, him, and Tina got together and started researching, trying to find out the details in regards to the lynching of Robert Clark. 1898?
June 13th, 1891.
1891. And so we spent a lot of time researching what we could find out, like the facts. And then Black in Appalachia produced a short documentary about what we knew to be the facts in regards to the extrajudicial murder of Robert Clark. And we did that so that Tina and the Community Remembrance Project could take it around the community and show it as an educational tool. Because one of the parts with the Equal Justice Initiative program is that you have to go out and do public education. You have to go out and do community organizing, basically, so that people understand the narrative. And I'm going to let you tell the rest of it.
You did a fine job, William.
Well, thank you.
So basically, we did the education and awareness for like a year and a half. And in December 2024, we erected the marker, which is located near Citizen Cemetery at the base of the cemetery. So the marker is double-sided. You'll see one that talks about lynching in America, and then the other side talks specifically about the Robert Clark lynching. One of the things that I learned as we were working on this project was that Mr. Clark had family here in Bristol, Virginia. So for me, it was really special to bring them in and to bring closure to something that they've heard about from generation to generation. And you'll see the Miss Vita in the middle holding the framed picture. She passed away last year, so I'm really thankful that she was able to be there for the marker dedication. So it was really a great project. Again, it was community. We had a community task force, a coalition that kind of helped us work through the process. We had a book club, so Carrie Lynn Paulson is here. She did a couple of book clubs or book studies on the courthouse lawn. Was a book that they read, and the book talks about lynchings on the eastern shore of Maryland, but what you'll see that there are consistencies and parallels around lynching. And then what you don't see here is that the book club did some work around the marker. They framed some stone around it and planted some flowers. So appreciate what was done on that. So it was really a community effort. People came together. The dedication was amazing. A lot of people came out, but we were just really pleased to work with the Equal Justice Initiative to memorialize Mr. Clark and to honor his memory and honor his family.
And I should note, Virginia Tech gave some money for the project, so we were able to, the Remembrance Project was able to buy some stuff for the event. And one final thing that we did, we got a teacher's guide produced. We did a suite of lynching films and produced, if any teacher in today's time is brave enough to show the film in their classroom, there's a teacher's guide that teachers can utilize for this film in particular.
And one other thing, William mentioned that in Montgomery, it said that the lynching occurred in Sullivan County in Bristol, Tennessee. We were able to get that corrected. And then we also worked with a professor with James Madison University, and he has a website called Racial Terror Lynchings in Virginia. So Robert Clark is included in that website. You'll see all of the sources, you know, where we did the research. But you can Google that. It's Racial Terror Lynchings in Virginia.
And did you all say anything about what was sent back to Alabama?
Yes, a piece of this project was collecting soil at the site of the lynching. We were unable to collect soil at the site where we thought the lynching took place, but we did collect soil downtown at the Bristol, Virginia courthouse, because that is where, you know, our seat of justice is. And then across the street where WCYB is located, that's where the jail was located, where Mr. Clark was removed and then taken to be lynched. So we collected soil at both of those locations, and the soil has been sent back to the Equal Justice Initiative in Montgomery, Alabama, and it will be on display there. So this is an anniversary year for America. We're in the America 250th anniversary right now. That 250th year of us being an official nation. How does that work? How does the work that you're doing on local Black stories intersect with the 250th and related themes and topics? And why is it important for us to be talking about these stories that aren't from the Revolution but are still part of the American evolution?
Well, so we were talking earlier, so I'm the first generation of my family that didn't live through formalized segregation, right? So my family's been here 260 years or so. And I'm the first generation that never lived through formalized segregation. So we've got one generation. I guess I've got a grandkid now, so we've got 2 generations in the bucket so far, right? Only now are we able to document and make available and have the luxury of applying our labor, our volunteer hours, our paid labor to the documenting and making available of Black history just now. And so, and it's ironic, maybe not ironic, that the atmosphere in regards to sharing and teaching Black history and other histories is being repressed. And so, and I think that's not a coincidence. I think that you know, just as and you can look at the trajectory of Black history in this country, as soon as you start to make traction, there's repression, right? You've seen it through Reconstruction. You've seen it through after the Civil Rights Movement. You've seen it when President Barack Obama was elected. So you you seen it after George Floyd got murdered and people were out in the streets, right? A little bit of progress, a lot of repression. And I think that one of the things now, 250 years into this nation's history, we have to do as much as we can, as quickly as we can before we can't. And before our elders are gone, we have to get their stories, and we have to make sure to keep Mama's box of photos and her Rubbermaid container full of everybody's business. We have to get those things and keep them.
The Bible with all the obituaries.
All the obituaries, the funeral programs, all these things those things are invaluable. And so we have to keep them, and we have to do it now. You don't do it tomorrow, because you know how quickly sometimes we lose our folks. So that's what it means to me is work. We got a lot of work to do together, and there's no shortage.
And I think for me, the same as William, but also a reflection on whose voices are being heard as we celebrate. Who are we celebrating? And, it should beg the question of why was there even a Black Bottom? If, we celebrate our freedom in 1776, so then why 100 and some years later do we have a Black Bottom? So I think it just begs for me just an honest reflection of why things were the way that they were.
It's a good time for interrogating those ideals and looking at them more clearly. So thank you. William, what other types of projects does Black in Appalachia support in the region? Tell us a little bit about some other projects we might be interested in.
Yeah, so every community, I don't know how many people in here have done or have been involved in community organizing work, but every need in every community is different, right? So the need and the labor required in Bristol, like every community doesn't have a Tina, right? And so the need looks different in each community. Right now we're working in McMinn County, Tennessee, and Southeast Tennessee with a young lady, Precious Brown, and she's working to document the Black history in Etowah and McMinn County and Athens, Tennessee, and in places where you don't think that there would be Black folks, like Polk County, Tennessee, Ducktown and Coppertown, and North Georgia. So we're working there. We're doing a cemetery project in Knoxville, the Mysterious 10 Cemetery in the historic Oakland community up near Fountain City. So we're working there to get that cemetery up and running again. Not running, but just just cleaned up, preserved. And we also do work with support for churches, historic Black churches, Henderson Chapel AME Zion Church in Rutledge, Tennessee. We help provide support for them, Bewley's Chapel in Russellville, Tennessee, and Whittico Presbyterian Church in Keystone, West Virginia. There's a group there. Miss Carlotta Young has an organization called We Are the Teachers. And Keystone, West Virginia used to be a thriving Black community. It had its own Black newspaper. It had the Black sheriff, Black mayor, and it was a Black kind of mecca. So at one point, it also had the only Black Presbyterian church in the whole state of West Virginia, Whittico Memorial Presbyterian Church. And that church is still standing. So Carlotta Young is working to turn that into a community center. And so we're trying to find resources for her to do that. And we're digitizing Black school records right now, focused on what's called the Five Rivers region, the counties around Hamilton County, Tennessee, which leads me to say that a lot of the work that we're doing also is where we're based out of. We're based out of Whitesburg, Tennessee, which is in Hamilton County. And we're working in and around our own community. We've got a bookstore, we've got a research room. We're building a low power FM radio station there. And so we're trying to dig in to where we're at and provide support for where we're at locally. And Reverend Mills is here, and he produces Ahern magazine, which is produced out of Whitesburg, Tennessee. He's my neighbor. I see him almost every day. And they've taken all your Aherns. Well, we had some Ahern magazines here, but if you want to subscribe and get copies of Ahern, talk to him. It's a black magazine produced in Whitesburg, Tennessee. And there's a lot that we do, but we'll move on.
So, Tina, what other hidden stories remain to be shared in Bristol, and what's next for your work? Specifically, talk to us about the Souls of Black Bottom, if you can.
Okay, I will. So, what hidden stories? You know what? I think there are hidden stories that maybe I haven't uncovered at this point, but there are a couple of things that I think are really significant. There were 3 HBCU presidents born in Bristol. Charles Spurgeon Johnson, the first president, black president of Fisk University, Dr. Thomas Law, St. Paul's College, and then Virginia University, and then he was also president of a community college born in Bristol, Virginia. Dr. Vivian Henderson went to Slater School on McDowell Street, president of Clark College in Atlanta. So 3 HBCU presidents out of this small town. We have much to be proud of. And then I talked to you about Mr. R.E. Clay, the barber, who was an assistant for Booker T. Washington. So Mr. Clay moved to Nashville. He was the Rosenwald agent for the state of Tennessee and was responsible for over 500 black schools that were created across the state of Tennessee. And the educational wing at Tennessee State University is named after him. So we have this really strong academic HBCU connection. So those are some hidden stories that I've learned and that I'm particularly proud of. So in terms of where do we go from here? Since it's Martin Luther King, Chaos, or Community, we're going to go for community. So I received a grant from Virginia Humanities and a grant from the Worrell Foundation. And those grants are focused on bringing visibility to the Black Bottom community. So in the coming weeks, I'll be pulling together an advisory team, and we'll start the work on how we bring visibility to Black Bottom. So the Virginia Humanities is focused on artwork. So I saw some really wonderful signage in Asheville where they're recognizing their historical black district. So they have this wonderful sign that has like some artwork on it. It's got some information about the history of the place. And then there's a map. So I talked to a couple of artists, Dakari Wheeler, who's a local young man here, had lunch with him while he was in on break. So talked to him a little bit about art. And then Jason Flack, who's an African-American artist in Johnson City. The story with, whenever I was sharing the story with Dakari, he was like really, really quiet. So I was kind of wondering, it's like, Dakari, are you really interested in this project? And he said, Miss Tina, he says, I'm just taken aback. He says, I really feel like I have an origin, because he didn't know anything about the history of the black community in Bristol. So it's really getting started on the Black Bottom project. I have like a bigger vision. I'd love to see a multicultural center so we can come together and engage around these topics, where we can bring in and have a field location for Black in Appalachia. So what I've seen at other locations, and even small locations, rural counties, the segregated schools are being utilized to share these stories. So I'm putting it out there. I'd like to see space at Slater School, or, you know, Douglas is privately owned, but I'd love to see space where we can have a field location for Black in Appalachia, and we can have a space where we can come together and have conversations like this and share stories and just educate and bring awareness. Mm-hmm. I think it's up for discussion, Sid. I'd love an office for Black in Appalachia, because a lot of the work that they do is in this area and beyond. So you could bring in students to do research, bring in interns. I just see just a wonderful opportunity to use that space to educate, bring awareness, and bring people together in community.
And I'll just do whatever Tina tells me to do.
And for those of you who don't know, there is a great community space that's done something, not with Black in Appalachia, but the Langston Center in Johnson City that is doing some of that work in that community. So having something like that here would be amazing. Yeah. So finally, we're standing here in a museum. Tell us what you think what role the museum you think could play in illuminating and sharing Black history from our region.
The only thing that, like, in my mind, since you're dreaming, and my dream is small though, is it would be, I think for this space in particular, if there was, a brochure about Black Bottom that people traveling through can pick up out of the museum, and they can open it up, and then it'll lead them to the signage about Black Bottom and the Lee Street markers. And so in my mind, that's something really simple, I think, that could be done. And ongoing programming. It don't have to be just in February. Yeah.
So, one thing I thought about, Lawrence Bell and I have done a couple of tours, and maybe there's some way that we can connect tours with the Birthplace of Country Music Museum. Maybe there's a way. I know that there were Black groups that existed in the 50s and the 60s. I've heard the Scat Cats. I know that there was Little Caesar. I know that there were, like these little groups that existed. So how do you kind of pull that thread from the Black community into what you're offering through the Birthplace? That would be helpful.
And all of those connect to my dream, which is something that I've talked to with you, William, several times, is about doing a history harvest about Black music in the region and Black musicians. We've done a couple of history harvests in the past with our own oral histories, specifically around music, since we're a music museum, but also with the story of Leslie Riddle and some of the amazing Black artists that were here in the 1920s and 30s in the Tri-Cities. I'm visualizing a couple 2 or 3 years from now, a wonderful special exhibit that could talk about the Black music of the region. So watch this space, and I'm going to talk to y'all. So, okay. So this has been an amazing conversation. I appreciate so much both of you being here. I appreciate everyone out in this audience. It's amazing to see so many folks here. It really means a lot to the museum to see this level of support for this type of programming. And I want to give Tina and William a really big round of applause before we do the Q&A. And then next, I am going to open it up to the audience to ask questions. I would ask that you wait till I get the microphone to you, because we are recording this, and we want to be sure that the YouTubers can see it now, and then when it goes out on BTES in a month or so, that they can hear the questions. So be sure and wait till you get the microphone to ask your question. Who would like to start?
Thank y'all for sharing that. Since y'all brought up Black music, one of my specialties in the past has been Black Appalachia hillbilly music. And the way that came about was, I wasn't even in Bristol, but the way that came about is because of the banjo. The banjo, for some people who don't know it, is from Africa. It's from Black Africa, and was brought here to the southern United States by the slaves. And so a great many of the Black hillbilly people that we don't know a lot about that live in the mountains played the Black banjo and introduced it to the white folks in the music. Black Appalachia banjo. and I've studied the the clawhammer banjo, and hillbilly banjo, and there's a lot. I have that project. That's something that somebody might want to continue to do.
I definitely want to talk to you. Who's next?
Tina, we've worked together with the project that Bristol Housing and now Beyond Housing has about what was called the Virginia Hill neighborhood, but it was essentially the residence of the folks who worked down in the Black Bottom area and then over on the Tennessee side in the Woodlawn district. But the heritage of taking the black residences for public housing started back in the 30s. And what we found in looking at those city directories was it was the cross streets. You had Moore Street and Russell Street and Lee Street as the streets running south-north where the white residences were. And it was the cross street where the trades people, and primarily the black tradespeople, because by the 50s or 60s, the white citizens were moving out to the suburbs. And when they began to condemn the houses for urban renewal, their criteria was density. It was the houses were built right next to one another, but unlike the suburban areas that had big yards, and that was one of the criteria that they were able to use to tear down things. And there was one other Green Book location.
The Sioux King Inn.
The Sioux King Inn, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Anybody else for questions?
Thank you so much for the work that you have done. While we're discussing throughout the community and talking with different individuals, we found out that people are really shocked to hear that there's a Black Bottom or that there was black businesses. The elder whites, they can recall. How can we educate not just our youth, but the whole community more so like what we're doing tonight? What are the plans moving forward to make sure that once everything is planned out with what you have in mind for the area, what's moving forward to keep that educational level going?
So this is perfect, and this is really the way it happens as we have opportunities to educate and bring awareness. So if, like, for example, I've been invited to go to Emory and Henry in February, so that will be an opportunity to talk about the project. The Junior League of Bristol, I think, invited me to come and share. So if you have organizations and you would like for us to come and share about Black Bottom or even anything related to the history, let us know. You can reach out to Black in Appalachia. I'm Tina, what am I? Tina at Appalachia, blackinappalachia.org. Where am I? Okay, there you go, there you go. So as you, have opportunities, reach out and let us know.
When integration came, I kind of felt embarrassed to say Black Bottom. Mm-hmm. But Black Bottom was our haven on the Tennessee side and the Virginia side. And I thank God that I lived long enough to see us walk hand in hand together. And Black Bottom is a beautiful place. It doesn't say the name is horrible, but the people that lived back in those days, everybody knew everybody. Everybody took care of everybody. If I didn't have a bowl of sugar, I could go next door and get it. We had families back then, and we had people that cared, and there was a lot of love back in those days. And believe it or not, but everybody knew everybody back in those days. So, but now we're so large now we don't even know who our neighbors are. But I thank God that we are where we are today, and I appreciate Black Bottom. And thank you all so much for the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
I think Tina needs to get a round of applause. This is not all I'm going to say. For the 2 grants. For the 2 grants you've received, and that does prove the money's out there. We just need to ask for it, which Tina doesn't hesitate to do. But what I wanted to say, I didn't come here to say this, but I asked Ms. Bell one time, I said, is it okay to call that area down there Black Bottom? She said, well, you can call it what you want to, but that's what it was.
So I would like to know, like, I'm born, raised in Dant, Virginia. And I would like to know what kind of history do you guys know and share about Russell County and all of those, you know, backwoods, whatever you want to call them places. Because, you know, Dant had a whole neighborhood of black folks and, you know, and coal miners and all this kind of thing. So what kind of history do we have about that?
Well, I'm waiting on an invitation, so if you're inviting me up to Russell County, I'll come up there. But there's one video that we had found located in the archives. I think it was at the Archives of Appalachia, or it may have been Duke's Archives. It's a video, a film from Dant in 1941, and so we got it, and we told the university, we were like, we're just going to put this up online. So it's up on Facebook, it's on YouTube, and that's, besides some census record stuff, that's, and some individuals I know. I don't know much about Dant, but you know, Dant's not too far from a place called Bundy's Chapel.
So I'm a part of the Bundy's Chapel family out of Russell County, Virginia. And we have been meeting since probably 1865. So I'm working with the state of Virginia right now to get a historical designation for Bundy's Chapel Church. So working on that right now. We made it through the first phase, so I'm waiting to get information on what that next step will be. And we would love to get a historical marker at Bundy's Chapel. And I'm sure you're familiar with what, so I'm part of it was Bundy's, the Dickinson family, so I'm part of the Dickinson family. So that's one way that we're working in Russell County.
I just want to say I have a roommate from Dant, Virginia, Sawmill Hollow, and I want to talk to you before we get
And I know they've...
His mother's going to turn 100 years old this year, and I'm thinking about all the stories she has.
Mm-hmm.
But she's from Sawmill Hollow.
Okay, very good. Very good. And I will say part of this work is the Citizen Cemetery in Bristol, Virginia, and Reverend Knopflin is leading that project. So, you know, stay close. She'll keep you posted on what's going on with that. So there's more work that's taking place. And then I see we've got Craig over here with Crown Cuts Academy, Craig Charles. And Craig is, I kind of put a bug in his ear about barbers and the connection to the work that he does to barbering, the historical barbering in Bristol. So he is working on his master's in Appalachian Studies, and his project will focus on barbering. So.
So years ago, when I was doing my undergrad, I had done a project on Prohibition in Bristol, 1907, 08, and in my research, I had found that when they were trying people for bringing liquor into Bristol, moonshine, it was always African Americans. There was always a bias there.
Yeah, so I was troubled by that as well, Samuel. Whenever you look at newspaper articles, but you've got to realize the time frame, and then what got published was always the negative aspect of what happened in that community. It wasn't the innovation, the beauty, and the creativity, the entrepreneurship of the area. It was really, a lot of it was negative.
But also, I think, like, not much has changed today, right? The demonization of our communities in the press continues to happen, right?
I'm going to take that project for y'all. It was one of my specialties that God gave me. So, I don't know if it's important or not, but I think after the Black Bottom, I'm not for sure, but from what I'm gathering from what everybody's saying, does anybody know anything about, or is there any historical importance to what used to be called Pig City and South Okra?
So Pig City is the Blackley Road village that I refer to. So whenever I did oral stories, I talked to, the Howards. So several, and your family, Freddie. So we have recorded that in oral stories. And then we also interviewed via Zoom Miss Della Bideman. She lives in Washington, D.C., so she was able to share with us what it was like growing up in that neighborhood. She called it the village. Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to know the location of the cemetery that you're referring to.
So the Citizen Cemetery is, where United Company is located? Okay, so whenever you go down that hill on Piedmont and you keep going straight, you reach a dead end. The top of that hill is where Citizen Cemetery is located. And then you'll also see the Robert Clark marker as you enter that cemetery area.
It's also a house, right? It is.
The first black lawyer for Bristol is buried there.
Yeah, and the
Among
brick
all
mason.
kinds of other
Yeah, and the brick mason for the train station, Mr. Fowler. So several prominent black folks are buried there.
I think he was the brick mason for the E.W. King building or the house, maybe also, but I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any other questions?
Somebody.
Sorry. Does someone
So
have their hand up?
So it was assault on a white woman, and that's a typical reason for lynching. Mm-hmm.
So on this part of inviting before storytelling, please. For those of us who are involved with other museums or other institutions, so for example, for Saltville, where there historically has been considerable black communities of size, but aren't now, and we need to tell those stories, to use of...
Don't be scared.
Well, it's not scared. I was about to say an impolite word. I was trying to find a more polite word to say white bullshit. So say a race riot in 1896 or lynchings or sundown towns. There's the two sides of that of black Appalachians telling the story and history that you want to tell in the way you want to tell it, when you want to tell it, how you want to tell it. And how, is someone who is a non-black Appalachian, how do you navigate institutionally when within your institution to start opening up with those stories, start to tell those stories? What are the best practices about navigating that? If that question makes any sense.
I don't know who your boss is, but I would encourage, and sometimes we get that question because there are some places that have historic black communities, but no more black folks live there and haven't for maybe a generation. And I would encourage folks in those communities to not be apprehensive, to dive in and treat it just like you would treat any other historical research and inquiry. Do your due diligence, check your facts, and don't be afraid. But you gotta have black friend. You gotta have somebody to run stuff by to be like, here, this is what I'm seeing. Is this, and you should run it by somebody and be like, this is what I'm seeing. Is this right? And so yeah, don't be afraid. That's what I meant by don't be afraid. Just dive in, use good inquiry, fact checks, because if you're interested in the story, your neighbors are also going to be interested in the story. Even though they may all be white, they're going to also be interested in those narratives as well. So I don't know if that answered your question, but I don't know who is your boss.
No boss. It's just not wanting to be improper and polite in the way of going about it.
Okay. So I'm just curious about the process, because I guess with all that I know that have happened, I kind of just assumed, like maybe Tina, you're doing all this by yourself, but you guys mentioned the field office. So do you have partnerships with schools, with some of the universities, et cetera, where they can send people out maybe to gather some of those stories, or even for some of that scanning, et cetera, that you're doing to digitize stuff?
So when we did the Community History Day, we had people within the community, the Bristol Public Library, Renee helped. So we had several people who assisted with that. The recent oral story collection that we did in 2024, it was a partnership with Virginia Tech. So they sent like 10 students to help collect those stories. And I know that William partners with colleges, so I'll let you share what you've done.
Yeah, we rely on partnerships to do almost everything that we do. So, increased capacity, increased labor. The University of Tennessee School of Information Science is really important for us because those are people who are trained and have hands in archival methods and can kind of keep everything tight. Public librarians, though, like every little small towns, librarians, they're instrumental to our work as well. So university departments, librarians, those people, and the general public as well. And then churches as well, church families also.
And I'm thinking about with Black Bottom and just this history, you have it's kind of like once you can't unsee it. So you know that this history exists. So we need somebody to help with like lesson plans, things like that. So how do I take, what I've learned so that it can be, used as you mentioned, Reverend Knopflin, to educate. So, I know that Martin Dotterwhite is here somewhere. So, he's offered with King University. Teresa Burris is here. So we need those kinds of resources. I need those kinds of resources because I stepped into this just as a person who wanted to learn about the history, and then I learned all of this. So now how do you take it forward? So there's that desire to do that and need assistance with that.
Yeah, lesson plans. The lynching narratives and some of the other films that we've made, not just lynchings, we've got teachers' guides and MTSU's Center for Historic Preservation. They're the ones that produce the teacher's guides for us, and so just trying to locate who's willing to help around each component.
Hello, my question is with this great presentation, love everything that you mentioned about Black Bottom. Now when I drive, I can't unsee it now, exactly. So it's almost looking at, and particularly because I feel like the area that our church is located is probably a part of it. I would like to know if there are any current black businesses or any current black businesses that's maybe open or that identify as a black business that may be local here, that there's maybe that we can identify to see which are those particular current businesses that may be still here or in the area that may be a part of the whole area, or or is there some kind of knowledge that we can get an idea of what those businesses are locally?
Mr. Charles.
So we do have, of course, Crown Cuts Academy. So I don't know if you've met Craig Charles. Craig is on Commonwealth. We know that Black Bottom doesn't exist, so there are no businesses in Black Bottom currently. And then I even calculated from the time that urban renewal happened, how many years was it before we had a black business in downtown Bristol? And I don't know if it's accurate, but I do remember it was about 60 years. So it was a long time, and we haven't had a cluster of black businesses since. So as far as any business that existed then, that exists now, or any connections, I'm not aware of any. But I know that there are black businesses that are kind of like spread, across the city, but not a lot of them. Yeah, Knopp's Hair Shop. I mean, there are not a lot of businesses, and what was really impressive for me was that there was this infrastructure that undergirded and supported black businesses. So when urban renewal came through, that was just, we're no longer investing in that. So it's kind of difficult to get started when there's no investment in what you're doing, right? So. Yeah, so that's probably the strongest carryover from Black Bottom is the funeral business. It's changed several names since then, but yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There you go. Mm-hmm. There you go. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Getting the light in my eye, and then I can't see who's got their hand up.
Thank you. Yes. I truly love the dynamic of this room, the multicultural, the diversity. I feel honored and blessed to be here. I've been here since '94, so we're 3 generations deep now. My parents are now living here. My sisters moved here. My son, Shaka. So I feel honored to be a Bristolian now. And what I wanted to share was, one, my son Bakari Andrew, he has a new business. Yes. He's new LLC, Bakari's Detailing, mobile detailing. Infrastructure should be coming shortly. But new businesses, and I think the more that we network, is the more that we'll get the opportunity to see who's who and what we're doing in the community. So I really appreciate what y'all are doing, because it gives us the exposure to say, hey, I'm a part of you too. And the part 2 of what I wanted to know, going forward with legacy. So right now, nobody thinks their legacy is rich as it is until, something historical happens and say, oh, my grandmother, my mother. So how do we begin to collect that shoebox? I have about 4 of them. Shoebox of history and digitize them. Is there a place that we can go to? How do we begin to start collecting our own history?
Yeah, one of the things that we do as a community service is digitize people's stuff. So if you've got stuff and you need stuff digitized, don't everybody here email me for digitizing stuff. But what I'm saying is if enough people have stuff that they want to get digitized, we'll set up at the Slater Center, or we'll set up at the library for a full day, and we'll have 3 or 4 people set up with scanners, and we'll digitize it and give you stuff on thumb drive back. So that's one of the things that we do as a community service for folks. But I would also suggest being careful about how you store your stuff. In a shoebox is fine, but you might want to think about, and you've got a museum here, maybe come and talk to Renee about storage how to best store things, cool, dry places, dark, and some archival kind of photo folders and stuff to put your stuff in, as well as something you should think about, because the photographs in the shoebox are fine, but it's if you want long-term storage, so you make sure that they're okay, maybe think about that. And somebody was telling me the other day, write names on the back of the photographs. Yes. So just do that. Whatever photographs you have, write names on the back.
We actually, a few years back, one of our previous collections managers wrote a blog post about preserving family photos, archival stuff that are specific to your family, and I would be happy to send that link out with the survey so that you all have access to that. But we are also a Smithsonian affiliate museum, and you can go onto the Smithsonian website and often find that kind of information too for free. So, but I will definitely send the link to our blog post. I think they're, yep.
I wasn't 100% for sure what she was asking about, but I actually did my own family's history, and if she was talking about as far as doing the actual history work, they have a couple of companies in the United States now that are helping families trace their roots. Was that what you were actually were you talking about, the actual tracing of the roots? Yeah, well, I can help you out with that. There's a couple of companies that are claim that they are able to trace people's roots back to Europe and Africa, and they probably can. But when I did my family's history, I went to the computers. I looked up all the different churches that I remembered that my mom told me that we were associated with. Got bulletins, looked at obituaries, found cemeteries, the whole 9 yards. Yeah.
Oh, let me get her first, then I'll come back over here.
We're going to run Renee's legs off.
And Tina, I just wanted to say, as I was sitting here tonight and learning from you all, I was just thinking of how great it would have been years ago to have known what you all taught tonight. And for that reason, I was wondering if you've considered reaching out to the CTE directors at the high schools and maybe doing something in this type of setting at the high schools as like an assembly, because I think it would be important for the youth of today to also know this.
Well, thank you, Melanie. I haven't thought about that, but it's a great idea, so thank you.
Okay. Was there someone else that I missed? Okay.
Tina, I'd like to thank you also again. I know you came to my home, and because it was with myself, 10 of us, 10 siblings, and we all went through Douglas School, and the first generation of us, like 4 of them graduated, and my sister Margaret was the first one to integrate into the high school. So, and then we came after that. But what I want to ask is, as we doing things, trying to preserve and find out about a lot of things, this new administration that I see that come in is trying to dissolve a lot of history in a lot of the cities and states and neighborhoods. Do you think we will be able to push through with what you're doing with this administration that's in now, trying to basically eradicate it, just get rid of it?
We've seen badder than that guy. I do think that the thing that encourages me, particularly with history and families' histories, is that, right now, like, nobody can stop you from gathering that 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 box of photographs and finding out who's in those photographs. Nobody can stop you from talking to your elders and interviewing them and writing down what they say, or, you know, nobody can stop you from going to the website and researching your family's heritage and compiling that stuff into books and making sure that your grandkids know this stuff. So right now, and with the work that we do day to day, you know, we don't receive any state or federal money. So, you know, I can say all kinds of stuff, you know? So it's really, so nobody can really stop us. That's my perception, but.
I mean, I agree with William. You know, I think about my father. He had dementia. And one of the things that I wanted to do was to capture his story before it got to the point where we couldn't have the conversation. So I did it. I recorded him. So I have that recording. And then whenever he passed away, I was able to type that up and share it with the children and the grandchildren. This is your granddad's story. This is my dad's story. So nothing stopped me from doing that.
I'm just going to give a quick plug for Virginia Humanities. I'm with the UVA Wise Center for Virginia Humanities, and we are, since I've heard so many people ask questions about how to get projects started, we are currently in our second grant cycle right now, accepting applications through April 31st. So if you leave here inspired, and if you're just an individual, go talk to somebody, a nonprofit in your community, maybe a church, your town manager, alumni association, anything like that, and go submit an application. So.
And that's funding specifically for Southwest Virginia.
Yes.
It's the Virginia Humanities website. So if you just type in Virginia Humanities, you will find that information there. And I'd also say that part of Virginia Humanities is Virginia Folklife, and they have some amazing programs too to sort of, especially great in this area in Appalachia, for apprentice and like mentoring programs that are really great for like sharing traditions, sharing stories, storytellers, etc. So definitely look up Virginia Folklife also. And there's equivalents in Tennessee if you're on the Tennessee side of the line. So, anybody else have a question? Well, that was. Oh, here we go.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just bringing a bit more diversity with a voice from England. I'm visiting from the University of Glasgow in Scotland. So I wanted you to know that what you're doing is valuable not just in this region, but across the world. I know my students in Glasgow would love to work on documents or digital materials that you're producing here. They would love to write dissertations about it at undergraduate, master's level. So we should talk about that.
Absolutely.
The other thing I wanted to say was that when we do local histories like this in our communities, we're in a way like there's something about these spaces that's kind of fugitive, and in a moment like this can be really disruptive in a good way, just by asking the basic questions we ask of each other and of the past. So I've really enjoyed being in this room of fugitives, so thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. That was such an amazing continuation of the conversation that we started more formally, to have all of you all sharing your stories, sharing your questions, etc. One thing I will say is, from the museum standpoint, our job is to look at history with unblinking eyes, and that is what museums do. And there are so many good museums in our community, so just be sure and look to the work they're doing, because they're trying very hard to be part of the story and to keep it going. And one thing I will say is that we have participated now several years in the MLK celebration. So if you go onto our website under our speaker sessions, which is, I believe, under education, there's a whole section of our speaker sessions that have been recorded for multiple years. And we've had folks like Dr. Dina Ross Jennings, who's a gourd banjo maker up in Central Virginia. We've had Christina Gaddy talking about the origins of the banjo, going back to Africa. We've had the Black in Appalachia folks the first year, and various other wonderful talks that are worth checking out. One of my favorites was with the Black Opry, which is an amazing group of young people bringing together Black country musicians and getting them gigs throughout the country. And they performed here a year or so ago, I believe, and it was pretty amazing. And the other thing that I'll throw out there, since I've got an audience of about 100 people here, which is awesome, is that one of the cool things about the story that we tell here at the museum, the 1927 Bristol Sessions story, is that there were Black musicians who performed in those sessions. Only one in each year. In 1927, it was a man called L. Watson, and in 1928, it was a duo called Tarter and Gay. That was Stephen Tarter and Harry Gay, and we have tried and tried and tried to find information about those folks, and it is very difficult. So if you all have heard those names before, or you know someone that might know those names, L. Watson, Stephen Tarter, Harry Gay, we would love to hear from you, because that is part of our story that we don't have as much information about as we would like. And also Leslie Riddle, who did not play at the sessions, but was instrumental in a lot of the work that the Carter family was doing and the music that they played. And we have more information about him, but we're always looking for extra details. So we would love to hear from you if you know anything about those folks. In the meantime, I'm going to really quickly, before we say a final thank you and applause for Tina and William, I just want to tell folks what to expect over the next few weeks here at the museum. Our next speaker sessions is on Tuesday, February 10th at 7 p.m. We will have Lisa Sorrell, who is the boot maker that we have an amazing cowboy boot exhibit about right now, and the Malpas brothers, the musicians, talking about creative expression in design and on stage, and that will be a virtual-only program, so you can do that in the comfort of your own home in your pajamas. And Thursday, January 29th at 6 p.m., we have the Tennessee Songwriters Competition qualifying round here at the museum. That's 20 songwriters competing to go on and hopefully end up at the Bluebird Cafe in Nashville. It's a great way to see some amazing regional and local songwriters and listen to some great music. Friday, February 6th at 10:30 a.m., we have our monthly museum story time, which is for toddlers, tots, and their grown-ups. You get stories, you get music, and you get a craft or coloring activity all for free here at the museum. And then Saturday, February 21st at 10 a.m., we have our next new museum volunteer orientation. We are always looking for new folks to come and help us tell the story of the music of this area. So those are some great opportunities. Thank you again, everyone, for being here tonight. I so appreciate it. And thank you especially to Tina and William for giving an amazing, amazing talk.